Hey, what's up guys? It's Ryan from the 8th-Bit Network, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my opinion on difficulty settings in video games. So when I boot up a game and I'm about to start, and the game asks me, what difficulty do you want to play on? I am almost always going to play on what I believe to be the intended difficulty. The reason I do this is because I really think that a lot of games just don't get it right at all. I'm going to be giving a couple examples of what I mean, and I'm going to go over why I think the option to select difficulty just shouldn't be implemented in most games at all. So a lot of games are a culprit of easy just being lowering enemy health and damage output, and or raising your health or damage output, and then the same thing for hard, it's the opposite. My first example is probably the worst offender of this. You could probably make a guess in your head. I'll give you a couple seconds. Literally any Bethesda game, alright? Skyrim has 6 difficulty modes: Novice, Apprentice, Adept, Expert, Master, and Legendary. They sound pretty cool, right? Guess what? They're not. It's really, really lazily done. You can look up the exact numbers, and actually those exact numbers are copy and pasted into the Fallout games. You look up the same stats for that, and it's going to be the same exact thing across the board for Bethesda. It's honestly just lazy game design. If you turn the difficulty up, you're just going to be chipping away at their health, and then if you get hit once, you're going to be just spamming potions, or the game's just going to be a breeze, and you're going to be one-shotting fucking dragons. One can only wonder why they've been using this boring and bland formula for so long.
It just works.
The Witcher 3 actually has a similar formula, but instead it lowers XP gains too, along with meditation not regenerating vitality at some of the higher difficulties. It's honestly just more tedious than difficult, because it just means that players have to spam more food and potions instead. Doesn't seem very fun to me. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these games I'm going to be listing I love, but sorry, I have to point it out. God of War has a similar model as well, but the AI is actually also affected by the difficulty, and this bothers me a little bit. It's not the only game where difficulty affects the AI, but just an example. Something about the enemy AI having different tactics depending on the difficulty, I just really don't like it. If a game designer wants to have certain enemies act more aggressive and try to do things like swarm you and flank you, I feel like it should just be in the game, like in God of War, for example. On the higher difficulties, enemies will tactically come at you and do things like try and flank you, whereas on the easier difficulties, they're just like fucking zombies. It's pointless. In Divinity Original Sin 2, there are enemies that won't even use certain abilities unless you play on a certain difficulty. This could be me just being really nitpicky, but I think that enemy mechanics in games should just be set. So with this game, I was really upset. I didn't think that finding data on XCOM 2's difficulty settings would make me not want to play the game again, which was probably a good thing considering, I got very emotionally invested in that game. Just a tip for if you play it, or any game like that, don't create characters that can die permanently based on real people. Not a good idea. I had nightmares, I don't want to talk about it. So on Rookie, soldiers' health starts at 6 rather than 5, and enemy patrols are smaller. Veteran is just the normal game, or so you would think. I'll explain that in a second. Commander has soldiers starting at 4 health rather than 5. Enemies have more health, and enemy sight lines will be larger and not as obvious. On Legend, everything is ramped up more to be harder, and resources cost more. Again, just more of a tedious thing. As this is, it seems like most games, right? I'm still not a fan of the system, however, it gets worse, unfortunately. Things like whether the alien AI will go easy on you. So for an example, at a lower difficulty, some aliens just won't take shots at you, or will do something really, really awkward looking, like instead of taking a shot on you that they have, they'll just like switch to cover like 3 feet away, and then that will be their turn if they feel like you're at a disadvantage on a lower difficulty. It just makes the whole game feel really, really awkward. In the game's aiming system on every difficulty except for Legend, the game applies a number of modifiers to both your attacks and the aliens' attacks. If I went through this video would be fucking hours long, but I'll give a couple of examples here. So there's a base aim multiplier. On Rookie and Veteran, your shots have an invisible multiplier applied to make it easier to hit. So the whole game is about, it's a strategy game. And there are these percentages, those of you who haven't played the game, that will give you, like, you know, your chances of hitting this enemy, or if you throw this grenade, or you know, all those types of things. But on most of the difficulties, the number that you're seeing isn't actually right, because there's things like miss streaks. This one's also on Commander difficulty too. For each consecutive miss in a turn, your soldiers are given an invisible aim bonus. So if, let's say you take a shot that's 50%, and then you want to take it again, and it's another 50%, but you miss again, it's not actually going to still be 50%, even though you haven't done anything strategically different. Than it just really frustrates me. Also, hit streaks. The aliens will take a penalty to aim if they hit you. So if you're left in, like, really shitty cover, which is your fault, or even if you aren't, and the aliens just get lucky, which is part of the game, and should just be part of the game, they'll miss more on purpose. The chances of them hitting you are just going to get lower and lower the more that they hit you. If you had a soldier die on the field, the aliens hit chance is lowered even more. I'm staring at a really big list right now, and it's going to get really boring if I just read off, and I'm going to get even more mad. It really makes me not want to play it again, and it makes me wonder how many games have hidden difficulty settings like this. Am I the only person this bothers? I really hope not. You know, it could be that I'm just being too nitpicky, but some of this is just a little off-putting to me. Some games, however, do thrive with difficulties. A game that I like to point out is Fury. In that game, hard mode is kind of like an expansion to the game. So, for example, when you first played on normal, that's like the intended for the first playthrough, and it taught you the game's mechanics through each boss, and then the next difficulty, it tests to kind of make sure that you've excelled at the main components of the game. Then on the hardest difficulty, the bosses are now all revamped, so with the knowledge that you're already familiar with the game's mechanics. The game is meant to be played on these different difficulties multiple times, so it's technically changing difficulty settings, but it's also part of the game's progression. Honestly, I think that a solution to these problems is to just not have difficulty settings at all. Besides, there are a few exceptions. A lot of developers now put these difficulty settings in as more of an obligation. There are plenty of games that don't have these options that worked really, really well, and still do. I hate to make the reference to Dark Souls that I feel like every reviewer does, but I'm gonna do it. Rockstar games like Red Dead, GTA, you know, those games don't have difficulty settings. Some of the earlier, and in my opinion, the good ones, the Assassin's Creed games, and then even games like Super Mario Bros, you know? I remember when I was playing that game when I was a kid, there was no difficulty settings. If I was stuck on, like, World fucking 3, I was stuck on World fucking 3. There was no easy mode to get me out of it, and I had to get better at the game. Get good, as people like to say. Shovel Knight, the Borderlands games, Borderlands 3 just got announced, and I'm almost positive those games didn't have any difficulty settings. You know, the list can go on and on. It's games from all types of genres. Not using the option and not having the option to affect things like enemy damage, enemy AI behavior, things like that, it just makes games feel much more alive and real. It feels like I'm in a world. I know not everybody looks for the same things in games as I do, but hey, this is just my opinion and what I personally prefer. Everybody is different when it comes to this stuff. Do you guys have any ideas on maybe how to innovate on difficulty settings? Would you change anything? You know, what do you think? Do you agree with me? Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited to make more. Love you. Goodbye.